Hi everyone, it's Lisa Mears. Thanks for joining me. In my video today, I am going to be using the Hugs stamp set and the matching dies from Pretty Pink Posh. I'm going to be using both the positive and the negative from the word Hugs to make two cards, and one of my cards is going to be a shaker card. So here's a look at the stamp set. You get this large word that says Hugs, and it's shaped with several different little icons to form the letters in the word. And there are larger individual stamps on the right side from the same icons that shape the word. So you have the suns, there's two sun shapes, there's a rainbow, there's some hearts, butterflies, clouds, and flowers. And then there's also the coordinating die set available. So I'm going to start out with a piece of Bristol smooth cardstock that I cut down to 4 inches by 5 1/4. And I'm going to just place it here in my Misti, and I'm centering the word Hugs right in the center of that cardstock. I'm going to ink it up with my archival black ink, and I'm going to stamp that down. I am going to be using my Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers to do some watercoloring, so that's why I am using an archival ink. This ink will not smear when I use the watercolor markers. And I'm also using the Bristol Smooth cardstock, which is also what I like when I do watercoloring. So I'm coloring up the images in the word Hugs. You can see there's some rainbows, there's suns, there's hearts, and all of those little icons form the letters. Now I'm just using one single color for each icon. I'm not doing any shading. In fact, I don't even bring in any water to do any watercoloring. I just color it all in with just one marker. It just saves time, but also because all of these little icons are so tiny, I just felt like I didn't even really need to do any shading here. So it's really simple and easy coloring, just laying down one color. I will have a list of all of the colors that I use down in the description box of this YouTube video. I will also have a list of all of the supplies, so links to the stamp and die set, ink pads, anything that I use will also be down in the description box in case you're interested in duplicating any of these cards. So as I mentioned earlier, there are also larger stamps that are the same images as the smaller icons that you see in the word Hugs, only on a larger scale. So I stamped out the sun, and this is the only larger stamp that I use, and I go ahead and color that up. And since this image is a larger stamp, I go ahead and use two colors here and apply some shading to the sun. Next, I'm going to take the Hugs die, and I'm going to die cut the stamped image that I colored up. And what I love about this die set is that the letters are all connected. So you'll see that after I run it through the die cutting machine, when I remove the die from my paper, it not only cuts out the individual letters, but it also leaves the outline of those letters in the paper, so you can actually use that negative piece on a card, and I'm going to do that today. Next, I have a thin black strip of cardstock. I add some powder to it, and I'm going to stamp out a sentiment. The sentiment comes with the Hugs stamp set. The sentiment says, "Sending you love and sunshine." I ink it up with some Versamark ink, and I stamp it down, and I'm going to add some white embossing powder over the top of this stamped image, and then I'm going to heat set this with my heat tool. I will repeat this process a second time off camera because I'm going to use the second sentiment for another card. Next, I use the Pretty Pink Posh scalloped border die, and I die cut 4 borders in different colors. I have a blue, yellow, purple, and pink scalloped border, and I'm just layering the borders onto one another. Meanwhile, you'll see there on the table I have a piece of white cardstock, and that measures 4 by 5 1/4, and I'm going to build my card on that white cardstock layer. So after I have all of these scalloped borders glued together, I'm going to put glue on the back of all of them, and I'm going to add them to the bottom of this white cardstock. And since the scallop borders were a little bit longer than that white card panel, I do snip off the ends. Next, I add some foam tape to the back of the letters in the word Hugs, and I center them on that white panel. And here I'm just using a ruler to make sure all of these are straight, and I add each one of those letters individually to the front of this white panel. I am going to tuck the sun underneath the S, so I am going to go ahead and add some glue and add that underneath that S, so the sun, it looks like the sun is peeking out. And then off camera, I did trim down that black cardstock just so that it fits right around the sentiment. I am going to add that sentiment right over the center of the word hugs. And then I'll add that panel to the front of an A2 size card base that measures 4¼ by 5½. And that completes my first card. So moving on, I'm going to create a shaker card using the negative piece from the last card. So here I have a piece of white cardstock that's cut down to 4 by 5¼ I have the word hugs still on my Misti. I did not remove it from the previous card, so it's in the same spot as last time. I added my powder to the cardstock and stamped it out with my VersaFine Onyx Black ink because I am going to use some black embossing powder, and I'm going to heat set that. So I used the powder initially to put on the cardstock so that when I add the embossing powder, it does not stick to where there is no ink. So here I'm just using my heat tool and I'm heat setting this embossing powder. And once I finish heat setting it, I will be putting some inks over top of this to add color. If you wanted to use the watercolor markers at this point, you can do that. But I chose to do a little bit of a quicker method and just apply some distress ink to the top rather than coloring each one of the individual icons on that stamp. So for the H in the word hugs, I added the salvaged patina distress ink. Over the U, I'm adding the Kitsched Flamingo Distress ink. And then I'll add the scattered straw ink over top of the G. And then I'm going to add the shaded lilac over top of the S. And that ink is a little bit light, so I do have to add a few layers of ink there just so that it does show up. But I love this color combination. I think it's so pretty. So this layer is actually going to be a bottom layer. There will be the top layer, as you saw me lay over top of the card panel just a moment ago, but that's why I'm not worried about going all the way to the edges with the ink because nobody is going to see it. I just wanted to worry about getting the ink over top of the letters because once I add this panel, the only thing that will show through the panel will be the word hugs with the ink on the letters. So here I'm taking my negative piece from the previous card and I'm putting some glue on the back side and I'm adding it to a piece of acetate. So remember, this is going to be a shaker card, so I needed to put some acetate to the back of this panel in order to keep all of my shaker bits inside. So once I add the acetate, I'm just going to trim off any excess, and it's really easy to do since this is a rectangular shape with some straight lines. Next, I'm going to take some double-sided adhesive foam. I always like to add some glue to the foam just to make sure that it adheres really well. So I add a strip here at the top. It wasn't quite long enough. I will be adding some more. Here I cut a little smaller piece and I'm going to add it right there on the right side. I'm going to add some thinner foam strips next to the word or next to the letter H, and then I'll add a long panel of foam here at the bottom of this word hugs. So I'll add that there, and then I'll add one more piece of foam on the left side. That way there's foam all around the word hugs, and the center part is where all of the shaker bits will go. So they'll be all enclosed. And it's important that when you are making a shaker card that you don't have any gaps in the foam, otherwise the shaker bits will fall out of those gaps. So here I'm adding some sparkling clear confetti mix from Pretty Pink Posh. I add it to the panel that has all of the ink on it, and then I remove the backing from the foam. Here again I'm adding some glue just to make sure everything adheres really well, and then I'm going to go ahead and attach this negative panel to the top of the inked panel. And those panels are the same size, so they'll fit perfectly. Just make sure you line up all of the edges, and now you can see all of those beautiful colors on the word hugs through that negative piece. Next, I'm going to take the sentiment. Again, this was one that I stamped out onto some black cardstock and heat embossed it. I used some of the white embossing powder, so I'm just going to go ahead and add that to my card. And then I went ahead and stamped out a heart from the same Hugs stamp set, and I'm using some of the Kitsched Flamingo Distress Oxide ink and adding a little bit of water to it, and I'm just adding some color to this heart. And the reason I chose to color it up that way is because that's the same color that I used on the U in the word hug. So I wanted everything to match perfectly. I added this layer to a piece of pink cardstock that measures 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and then added that to an A2 size card base. And that will complete this card. So once again, all product links will be listed in the description box below. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe for more card making inspiration. Thanks for watching and have a great day. Bye-bye.